Hello, teacher.
Hi there. Okay. So let me see. All right. So this is session. This is our last session, and we're gonna be practicing last task. So we have already done this last session. You know, remember it's the one where we just have the lecture, the two subtopics, and the details. So you got a short intro at the beginning. The lecture is about two types of attention or whatever. And then you move on to the first one, details, second one, details. Okay, you remember?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, then. So let's go with our first task. Okay, so now let's listen to this lecture.
Seconds to speak. Now listen to part of a lecture in a business class.
Today we'll talk about how companies determine the initial price for their products. By that I mean when they first introduce a product in the market. There are different approaches, and today we'll discuss two of them. They are quite different, each with their own advantages. One approach, or strategy, sets the initial price of the product high, followed by a lower price at a later stage. Why? Well, when introducing a new product, companies want to build a high-quality image for it. Products that cost more are believed to be of higher quality. So, during the early stages of the product life cycle, companies can make very high profits from consumers willing to pay more for a high-quality product, and although consumers know that prices will eventually go down, they are also willing to pay more to get the product sooner. This approach works very well with, innovative high-tech products, for example. Now just think about when video recorders or video cameras or even cell phones first came out. They were very expensive, but then they became much more accessible. Another very common strategy sets an initial price low. Now this happens when the market is already saturated with a product, and the strategy is to undercut its competitors. Say there's a newly starting computer maker trying to gain market share. So what do? Well, they offer a computer at an affordable price, lower than existing brands. By doing this, the company appeals to new consumers who weren't probably even interested in getting a computer. And, well, of course, to existing consumers who might now be tempted to switch brands. Now, how does this company make profits with its low-priced computer? Well, one thing that's often done is to encourage their customers to buy accessories also manufactured by them, like printers or software, for example.
Using the points and examples from the lecture, explain the two pricing strategies described by the professor.
Okay, now you get 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so please start speaking now.
The lecture is about how companies determine the price of a product. To start the lecture describes higher prices, which is when someone wants to buy something that is high price, this will expect that is also high quality, and that's how it sells this kind of products. Then another example is when the price is low, which it's when we already have a lot of kinds for this eating.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't have enough time to explain the second.
So, what can we do? You're actually good with time. I think, I don't know. Just maybe because I don't want, I mean, I don't want to ask you to speak faster because I think you're focusing on making it right, you know, or on being careful with the grammar and stuff. So just maybe try to summarize it a bit more, or just try to, the second one, you can mention it quickly. So if the first one, it took a bit longer to explain, just make sure that you mention the second one at least. Like the second one is the opposite of the first one, setting the price low. And don't explain it and just tell me, go directly to the examples. That's the most important part, you know, saying, okay, the first one is about setting the price high, and this, then you go to the example, right? For example, this happens with high-tech products like cameras or cell phones. That's it. So subtopic and example. And then you can say the second one, on the other hand, is setting the price low. And this happens when you have a lot of products in the market already, like or such as, and then you tell me what the examples are. I don't know. I think that was I don't remember the example, but mention it, you know? So don't forget the examples. You forgot it at the beginning. And just summarize it a bit more, maybe. Okay, what else? Remember, the word is determine. So it's about how companies determine the initial price of a product. So there are two strategies. Also, to save time, you could just repeat, you know, the lecture is about two pricing strategies. First, the lecture talks about setting the price high, which happens when, so careful with that. Try to check out some vocabulary, for instance, like words like market. For instance, you said, you know, when you have a lot of kinds of this product, when the market is saturated, like, will be the right term. So careful with that. And yeah, I think mostly it's time, you know, so summarize it a bit more.
Okay, teacher, thank you.
Okay, questions?
No, it's okay, teacher, thank you.
All right, so now let's do, let me see. Okay, so here's the lecture.
Listen to part of a talk in an art appreciation class.
In order for art to communicate with the combine this visual element to express meaning or emotion. It's really the visual components of the work, things like color, texture, shape, lines, and how the elements work together that tell us something about the work. Artists combine and manipulate these visual elements to express a message or to create a mood. Think about how a painter might use color, for example. Might use color, for example. You all know from experience that different colors appeal in different ways. different meanings. An artist uses certain colors to evoke a particular mood and make powerful statements. The color red, for example, is a strong color, can conjure strong such as extreme joy or excitement or even anger. Blue, on the other hand, is considered a cool color. Blue colors tend to have a calming effect on
Sorry?
viewers. Another visual element important to art.
I don't know what's happening. I'm not hearing anything. I was
You're not
at
hearing
the
anything?
first.
Really? I'm gonna play it again. Let me know. Let me know if you can hear it. Can you hear it?
To part of a talk in an art
Yeah?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so I'll play it again.
appreciation class.
In order for art to communicate emotions, it has to combine various visual elements to express meaning or emotion. It's really the visual components of the work, things like color, texture, shape, lines, and how these elements work together that tell us something about the work. Artists combine and manipulate these visual elements to express a message or to create a mood. Might use color, for example. You experience that different colors appeal in different ways to the senses and can convey different meanings. An artist chooses certain colors to evoke a particular mood and powerful statement. The color red, for example, is a strong color and can conjure up strong emotions such as extreme joy or excitement or even anger. Blue, on the other hand, is considered a cool color. Blue colors tend to have a calming effect on viewers. Another visual element important to art is texture. By texture, I mean the surface quality or feel of the work, its smoothness or roughness or softness. Now, of course, in some types of art, the texture is physical. It can actually be touched by the fingers. But in painting, for example, texture can be visual. The way art paints certain areas of a painting can create the illusion of texture, an object's smoothness, roughness, or softness. A rough texture can evoke stronger emotions and strength, while a smooth texture is more calming and less emotional. As I said earlier, artists often combine elements to convey a message about the work. Take a painting that, say, uses a lot of strong colors like red and oranges and uses brush strokes that are broad, wide sweeping brush strokes that suggest a rough texture. Well, these elements together can convey a wilder emotion to the viewer more than in, say, a painting with tiny, smooth brush strokes and soft or pale colors. Artists use these visual effects and the senses they arouse to give meaning to their work.
Using points and examples from the lecture, explain the importance of visual elements in painting.
All right, so now you got 30 seconds to prepare. Okay, so please, if you're ready, you can start speaking now.
The lecture is about how important are the visual elements on paintings. To start, the lecture describes how artists combine colors, textures, and shapes in order to express different messages and also emotions. For example, we can see in a painting different kinds of meanings. they are powerful statements or only a little statements. But teacher, that's all that I have. I didn't
Okay.
get it, the last part.
All right.
I couldn't understand very well the lecture, but it was about painting.
Okay, you're
I
right.
don't know.
So, Paula, the biggest thing I could tell you is try to be a bit more of an active listener, okay? So you know what you're looking for. 2 subtopics, 2 details. The first one in this case was color. The second one was texture, right? The examples were red and blue, and in the second one was, I think, implied texture and actual texture. So those are the things that you really want to get, you want to catch. So just when you're listening, pay attention for those. You will find them, I assure you. And that's the most important stuff. Don't focus too much on explaining a lot. As long as you say, it's about art elements. We have first color, such and they use it to express emotions. For instance, we have blue, which expresses this, and then move on to texture. So focus on being more of an active listener and catching those things that you want, okay? 2 subtopics and 2 details. That's what you're looking for. All right, Paula? So I gotta run, but I'll see you next session, okay?
Thank you, teacher. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hi, David.
Oh, hi.
Hi, thanks so much for waiting. I was
Okay.
still finishing. Okay, so today is our 5th session, and we're going to be practicing the same one we were looking at last session, the task 3. So in this case, you got first the reading. You're looking for the topic, the title, the definition, and then you got the listening where you have some examples. Remember?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so at the beginning, you need a short intro, topic and definition, and then you move on to the examples. Okay. So let's start with the first one. All right. Okay. So here's the reading. Remember, you got 50 seconds to read, starting now. All right. Now let's listen to the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class.
Consider this experiment. 2 groups of people were asked to watch TV, and while they were watching, a picture flashed on the screen. Less than a second, very quickly, so it was barely noticeable. The picture was of a boy with a birthday cake. Now, like I said, there were 2 groups, and each group saw a slightly different version of the picture. One group got the boy looking angry. In fact, he was actually throwing the cake on the floor. The other group got a picture of the boy smiling, happy, holding out the cake like he was offering it. Same boy, same cake, but different emotions expressed in each picture. Everyone was then asked to look at a different image. Now, this is a third image, right? Again, it's the boy and the cake, but this time the image stayed on the screen. In this picture, the boy's just holding the cake, basically no emotion on his face, everything very neutral. Now remember, nobody knew they'd already seen a picture of this boy. After a minute, everyone was asked to describe the boy's personality. Those who'd been exposed to the image of the angry boy, they generally described the boy's personality negatively. Those who'd earlier seen the happy boy described him, well, positively.
Describe what subliminal perception is and explain how the experiment discussed by the professor illustrates this phenomenon.
Okay. So now you get 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, David. So please, if you're ready, you can start speaking now.
Subliminal stimulation theory states that people can be influenced by external stimulation, visual or audio, without even noticing. The professor illustrates this with the following example. There were two groups of people. They were shown many images and sounds, but half of the group, one group was shown the boy, the picture of a boy with a birthday cake, angrily throwing it away, and the second group was shown the same boy with the same cake, but smiling and happy. At the end of the experiment, the people were shown the image of that boy with a neutral attitude. The first group described the boy negatively, and the second group described it positively.
Okay, great. I think we're missing a bit of time, 10 more seconds, and it would have been perfect. So just try to summarize it a bit more, the example. Even you don't really have to explain it that much, So the way that you did at the end, you didn't really tell me what the details were. You just said the first group had a negative perspective on the boy, or were describing the boy negatively, and the second one positively. So that's the way that you want to summarize the beginning as well, all the steps of the process. So you could say one group was shown, I don't know, I think it's, the boy throwing away the cake, right? So one group was shown the same, or two groups were shown the same boy. One was one in which the boy was angry, and the other one in which he was happy. And then you tell me. So let's try to summarize it a bit more so that you can make it on time. At the beginning, don't forget to mention the title. It's important that you do. So I like the way that you're doing it. I really do. The template that you have, with the following example and everything. But don't forget to mention the topic. So subliminal perception is when the perception of a stimulus just below the threshold of conscious awareness. Yeah, that's it, all right? So subliminal perception is this. So don't forget to mention that topic. And yeah, I think that's it. Other than that, I think you're perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Questions?
Oh, yes. When is the course finishing?
Okay, so not sure. Let me see though. Okay, so this week we're looking at the listening this week, and then we're done with the course.
Okay, thanks.
All right, let's go with the next one. All right, so here's the reading, 50 seconds to read. Okay, now let's listen to the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Okay, so a good example of this, found right here in North America, is something an animal called the American pronghorn does. Pronghorns, as you may know, are a kind of deer-like animal. They live out on the open, grassy plains, somewhat in the middle of North America. And they are super fast. Pronghorns are, in fact, noted for being the fastest animal in the Western Hemisphere. Once a pronghorn starts running, zoom, none of its present-day predators, like the bobcat or coyote, can even hope to catch up with it. It's off in a flash. Okay, so why then do pronghorns run so fast? That's the question. Well, it turns out that quite a long time ago, I'm talking tens of thousands of years, things on the grassy plains used to be very different for the pronghorns. Because back then, lions used to live on the plains, chasing and preying upon the pronghorns. And lions, of course, are a very swift-moving mammal, much faster than the bobcat or coyote or other predators that you find on the plains today. But now, however, lions are all extinct in North America. They're no longer a predator of the pronghorn. Tens of thousands of years ago, though, the lions were there, chasing the pronghorns. So, back then, the pronghorn's speed was critical to its survival.
Using the example of the pronghorn and lion, explain the concept of a relict behavior.
Okay, now you get 30 to prepare your response. Okay, so hi Kay, do you think you can give us like 3 more minutes and I will make it up to you at the end?
Okay, teacher. Okay, teacher.
Please. Thank you so much. Okay, David. So if you're ready, please start speaking now.
Relic behavior is a kind of behavior that is no longer necessary, but used to be necessary for an animal's behavior survival time ago. In the lecture, the professor illustrates this with the example of pronghorns. They are the fastest animals in the Western Hemisphere, and no predators can catch them right now, but time ago, lions used to live in the continent. Since lions are too fast moving, it was necessary for pronghorns to move faster in order for them to survive.
Okay, great. Now you summarized it perfectly. You didn't even, I mean, you had extra time. That's good. And you did mention the topic. So I think that was really good, David. Maybe at the end, if you have extra time, connect it back. You could say, so that's why, and repeat the same definition. This behavior that's no longer needed in pronouns is known as a relict behavior or something like that. But that's extra. I think everything was great. So you're already good. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Okay, David. So I'll see you in class.
I see you.
Bye-bye. Okay, great. So here we are. So we're gonna be practicing task 3, same one we were doing last session. Remember that in this one, first you get the reading part, where you just have to look at the title, that's the topic, and then find out what the definition is. And then you will listen to a lecture where you will have some examples about that, and you just have to summarize everything in the response. Okay, you remember?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so let's start with the first one. Here's the reading. You got 50 seconds to read. All right, now let's listen to the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class.
Consider this experiment. Two groups of people were asked to watch TV, and while they were watching, a picture flashed on the screen. Less than a second, very quickly, so it was barely noticeable. The picture was of a boy with a birthday cake. Now, like I said, there were two groups, and each group saw a slightly different version of the picture. One group got the boy looking angry. In fact, he was actually throwing the cake on the floor. The other group got a picture of the boy smiling, happy, holding out the cake like he was offering it. Same boy, same cake, but different emotions expressed in each picture. Everyone was then asked to look at a different image. Now, this is a third image, right? Again, it's the boy and the cake, but this time the image stayed on the screen. In this picture, the boy's just holding the cake, basically no emotion on his face, everything very neutral. Now remember, nobody knew they'd already seen a picture of this boy. After a minute, everyone was asked to describe the boy's personality. Those who'd been exposed to the image of the angry boy, they generally described the boy's personality negatively. Those who'd earlier seen the happy boy described him, well, positively.
Describe what subliminal perception is and explain how the experiment discussed by the professor illustrates this phenomenon.
All right, now you have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so if you're ready, please start speaking now.
From the reading, subliminal perception is described as how people perceive stimulus without their awareness. The professor further demonstrates this topic by giving an example by dividing people into groups and showing them by TV a picture flash by a boy with a birthday cake. In the first group, the picture that it is shown is a boy angry. In the second group, the picture flash is a boy smiling. So the professor gives the example of how people perceive the boy in the different picture flash. In the hungry boy picture, people perceive it like a negative, and in the smiling boy picture flash, the people perceive it like a positive emotion. That's how the professor gives the example of subliminal perception. Sorry.
Okay, so it was well explained, but you did miss some time. No.
Yes,
Okay, so I was gonna say, don't forget to mention that the topic, the title, but you did mention it at the end, so that's how the professor explains subliminal perception. However, be aware that sometimes you will not have time to mention that part at the end, that extra conclusion. So that's why it's important that you mention it at the beginning in case you run out of time. So don't forget to say subliminal perception is at the beginning, right?
okay.
Summarize a bit more your example. Don't focus too much on the details. You could say the example of an experiment. In this experiment, you have two groups of people that are shown a flash of an image of a boy. One in which he's angry, and the other one when he's smiling. So the first group, had a positive perception of the boy, and the second one a negative one. So just try to summarize it a bit more. Don't focus too much on the steps or the details, and you will be good.
Okay.
Regarding grammar, I noticed that you're using maybe too much this preposition, and sometimes it's not always the correct way. So record yourself, and anytime you say by, try to understand what preposition will be the one that you will have to use. For instance, at the beginning, you said an example by an experiment or by a group of people. It will be an example of a group of people. And a lot of times you said by, so careful with that preposition. Remember adjectives, angry, right? Careful with that. And yeah, so just time, summarize it a bit more, careful with the preposition by, and that's it.
Yes, okay, teacher.
Okay, let's do one more. Okay, so here's the reading, 50 seconds to read. Okay.
Now listen to part of a lecture in an art history class.
Let's consider the outsider artist Henry Darger. Darger lived by himself in a tiny inn in Chicago in the 1900s. He had no friends and spent all his spare time there alone, creating hundreds of paintings and drawings. He had never formally studied art and worked completely private, so no one ever saw it or responded to it during his lifetime. And so when you see Darger's work, you notice how unique it is. It doesn't remind you of anything you've ever seen before. It's very much his. For example, one piece, it's a watercolor painting. In this piece, he illustrates a story about the adventures of such children. But see, Darger had a really hard time drawing human figures, yet he managed to come up with his own rather unique solution for the problem. He simply cut out pictures of children from newspapers and magazines and pasted them into his own painted illustration of trees, flowers, and grass. The results look a little strange. Darger's picture looks more cluttered, more crowded with details than the pictures of other artists, because its entire surface is painted and there are no spaces left empty. It's also a lot longer than the pictures of most other artists, about 9 feet long.
Explain why Henry Darger is considered an outsider artist.
Now you get 30 to prepare your response.
Teacher, I didn't listen too well. The listening, it was, I don't know if my connection is bad,
Oh my.
but it was cut.
You mean the last part only or everything?
The first part.
First part, okay. Let's listen to the first part one more time.
Okay.
Part of a lecture in an art history class.
All right, so let's consider the work of the outsider artist Henry Darger. Darger lived by himself in a tiny apartment in Chicago in the 1900s. He had no friends and spent all his spare time there alone, creating hundreds of paintings and drawings. He had never formally studied art and kept his work completely private, so no one ever saw it or responded to it during his lifetime. And so when you see Darger's work, you notice how unique it is. It doesn't remind you of anything you've ever seen before. It's very much his own. For example, one piece, it's a watercolor painting. In this piece, he illustrates a story about the adventures of 7 children. But see, Darger had a really hard time drawing human figures, yet he managed to come up with his own rather unique solution for the problem. He simply cut out pictures of children from newspapers and magazines and pasted them into his own painted illustration of trees, flowers, and grass. The results look a little strange. Darger's picture looks more cluttered, more crowded with details than the pictures of other artists, because its entire surface is painted and there are no spaces left empty. It's also a lot longer than the pictures of most other artists, about 9 feet long.
Explain why Henry Darger is considered an outsider artist.
Hi there, Karina. Do you think you can give us like 3 more minutes? And I'll make it up to you at the end of the session.
Okay.
Okay,
No
thank you so
problem.
much. Okay, Kate, so 30 seconds to prepare. All right. So you can start speaking now.
Okay. The reading discusses about outsider art, that it is made by people who live in an unconventional way outside of the society. The lecturers discusses about Henry Darger, an outsider artist. Henry Darger once painted a watercolor paint of 7 children and he did it in an unconventional way. It was strange how he made it. He he cut images of children and put it in a big paint with a lot of details, and it was considered like an outsider artist because of this method. I don't know.
Okay, so that's great. I think this time you did just fine. You were a lot better with time. You mentioned the topic at the beginning, and you focused on what's important, you know? Maybe I would try to cut for the first part in order to explain maybe a bit more about, you know, how he lived, for instance. So you forget about that to
Okay.
say, you know, that he lived alone, that he had any connection with humans or anything. But I think in general, it was really good. Again, careful with prepositions. So this time, for instance, the preposition about was the one that you were using. So he discusses about. That about is when you use the verb discusses or discuss, you don't need that preposition anymore. So in general, check out the use of prepositions like about, of, by. That's gonna help. Check out
Okay.
some art vocabulary as well. Sometimes you will have some art topics. So for instance, the word canvas will be useful in your case. So check out some words, and I think you're good. You can really get a good score. You just need to practice maybe a bit more.
Okay, teacher, thank you.
All right, Kate. So I'll see you in class. Bye bye.
See you. See you, teacher.
Okay, there. So now I can meet with you. All right, great. So today we're going to be practicing task 3, which is the same one we were practicing last session. Is the one where you have the reading at the beginning, you have the topic, the definition, and then you get the lecture with some examples, and you just gotta summarize everything. You remember how this was? Great, are you there? No? No? Hi.
Hi, teacher. I had connection problems. Sorry.
Yeah, I noticed. No worries. Okay. So we're going to be practicing task 3 today, which is the same one we were practicing last session. So remember, first you will read something, look at the title, that's the topic, and find the definition. And then you will listen to a lecture in which you will have some examples. Just pay attention, try to catch what those are, and then you just gotta summarize everything. You remember?
Yes, I remember.
All right, so let's start with the first one. Here's the reading. Remember, you have 50 seconds to read, starting now. Okay, now let's listen to the lecture.
Are we listening to the lecture?
I'm sorry?
I can listen the lecture.
Oh my, I think, yeah, I think it's, all right, see, so yeah, I wasn't sure the screen, so I'm sorry, I will now. Let's listen.
Okay.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class.
Consider this experiment. Two groups of people were asked to watch TV, and while they were watching, a picture flashed on the screen. Less than a second, very quickly, so it was barely noticeable. The picture was of a boy with a birthday cake. Now, like I said, there were two groups, and each group saw a slightly different version of the picture. One group got the boy looking angry. In fact, he was actually throwing the cake on the floor. The other group got a picture of the boy smiling, happy, holding out the cake like he was offering it. Same boy, same cake, but different emotions expressed in each picture. Everyone was then asked to look at a different image. Now, this is a third image, right? Again, it's the boy and the cake, but this time the image stayed on the screen. In this picture, the boy's just holding the cake, basically no emotion on his face, everything very neutral. Now remember, nobody knew they'd already seen a picture of this boy. After a minute, everyone was asked to describe the boy's personality. Those who'd been exposed to the image of the angry boy, they generally described the boy's personality negatively. Those who'd earlier seen the happy boy described him, well, positively.
Describe what subliminal perception is and explain how the experiment discussed by the professor illustrates this phenomenon.
Now 30 seconds to prepare your response.
Okay.
Okay. Now got 1 minute to speak, so you can start speaking now.
The lecture is about subliminal perception. That is the ability of the human being to perceive any stimulus without being aware of it. The professor explains this by giving the example of an experiment when two groups of people were watching the TV and a picture of a boy with a birthday cake flashed on the screen. Some part of the group saw an angry boy and the other part of the group saw a happy boy. Then they saw this image a second time. This time the boy had no emotion. At the end, the scientists asked to describe the boy, and the ones that saw the boy with an angry face described him negatively, while the group that watched him with a happy face described him positively. And those are the examples the professor gives.
All right, nice. I think that was an awesome response. The only thing that was missing maybe is a bit of time, right? If you had like 5 or 10 more seconds, that would have been perfect. So what I can say is just try to summarize a bit more, maybe the example. You will always, when you have experiments, it's kind of the same thing, you know, the steps, process and everything. So for instance, you mentioned at the beginning, I like that you summarize it, you know, you didn't mention like whether they were, the boy was holding a cake or whether he was throwing it away or something. You just said an angry boy and the other one was a happy boy. Now, I think when you're gonna tell me what the results were, like the first group, the group that was shown the happy boy, you could just say, you know, the first and the latter group, and that's also good for vocabulary. So the first group described him positively and the latter one negatively. So that way you don't have to explain it again. And in general, just try to summarize it a bit more. It's hard, I know, when you have these experiments, but I'm sure you can do it. What else? Careful, remember it's scientists, not scientifics. So the scientists or the researcher did this. And yeah, I think that, you know, the only thing that really was missing is time. So summarize it a bit more.
Okay.
All right. Now let's do another one. Okay, so here's the reading. Okay, now let's listen to the lecture.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a
A good example of this, found right here in North America, is something an animal called the American pronghorn does. Pronghorns, as you may know, are a kind of deer-like animal. They live out on the open, grassy plains, somewhat in the middle of North America. And they are super fast. Pronghorns are, in fact, noted for being the fastest animal in the Western Hemisphere. Once a pronghorn starts running, zoom! None of its present-day predators, like the bobcat or coyote, can even hope to catch up with it. It's off in a flash. Okay, so why then do pronghorns run so fast? That's the question. Well, it turns out that quite a long time ago, I'm talking tens of thousands of years, things on the grassy plains used to be very different for the pronghorn. Because back then, lions used the plains, chasing and preying upon the pronghorns. And lions, of course, are a very swift-moving mammal, much faster than the bobcat or coyote or other predators you find on the plains today. But now, however, lions are all extinct in North America. They're no longer a predator of the pronghorn. Tens of thousands of years ago, though, the lions were there, chasing the pronghorns. So, back then, the pronghorn's speed was critical to its survival.
Using the example of the pronghorn and lion, explain the concept of a relict behavior.
30 seconds to prepare. Okay. So please start speaking now.
The lecture talks about relic behavior when a behavior no longer serves the original purpose due to changes in the environment of the animal. The professor explains this by giving the example of the American pronghorn, that it's a super fast animal, but today there is no reason for them to be fast. But a long time ago, they were chased by lions, so they had to be faster than them in order to survive. Now there are no longer lions in America, so they don't need this anymore. So this is the example of relic behavior.
Okay, great, perfect. So you see how this time you managed a lot better your time. You summarized it, everything I needed to know was there, and you even have extra time. And I think it was mainly because you were looking at the clock. I think in the previous one you were too focused on your response, but it's, I'm not telling you to constantly be looking at the screen, at the clock, but always when you're like in the middle of it, it's good to look at it. So great. Everything was perfect. I think you got real good grammar and the content is good, the structure is good. Maybe I could tell you pronunciation a bit. For instance, the word bat, careful with that, right? Try to say like that, bat instead of bot or bet, I don't know. So okay. Practice the word. And also try to use maybe transitions. For instance, instead of saying bad, you could say, no, nevertheless, I don't know, whatever. But, everything is perfect. So just that tiny detail maybe, and we're good.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I'll see you tomorrow in class.
Thank you, teacher. Bye.
Bye, have a nice night.
Thank you.